In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a sweeping radar screen using a procedural texture in Blender. So I'm going to go ahead and open up Blender. And I don't need the splash screen right now. And this default cube I'm going to get rid of. So I'm going to hit X on a Mac or delete on a Windows and delete that. And I'm going to go ahead and click Add, and I'm going to add a mesh, and I'm going to add a circle. Now I don't want to click anything right now because I want to come up to this little menu here and make some changes here. Vertices, I'm going to try 64. It'll make it a little bit rounder. I'm going to leave the radius at 1 meter. The location. Location-wise, we can actually leave it right there. The other thing we're going to do is change that rotation. So I'm going to change that rotation to 90 degrees, and then that's kind of set. So location-wise, we can actually leave it right there. But the last thing we're going to do, right here where it says fill type, it says nothing. I'm going to choose N-gon, and then that's going to fill in that circle. Next thing I want to do is move this camera. So I'm going to select my camera. Camera is selected. And then I'm not going to need this light also. I suppose I can delete that. I'm going to X that or hit delete. And then select that camera again. And you can see it's selected here. I'm going to make some changes to the location and rotation of the camera. So location, I'm going to say 0. And then you can see it's moving. It's moving in the X at 0, Y 0, and then Z at 0. So now it's right there, but the rotation is wrong. I'm going to change that Z rotation to 0, and that X rotation I'm going to change to 90. Now it's straight on. It's in the wrong place, so I'm going to take that Y location and push it back a little bit. But I want to take a look at what does it look like through the camera. So I can hit this button here, and then that brings me my camera view. And I want to actually change my camera, so I want to push back a little bit further. So there's a little arrow right here. I'm going to click that arrow. And where it says in that view tab, I'm going to click that, and then I'm going to choose camera to view. Now if I zoom in and out, I'm actually controlling my camera. And maybe I want it about here. Now if I am holding shift, you can see I'm moving around, and I don't want to do that. And if I hold command and the center mouse button, then I can change that a little bit more, and then it's changing that Y position. I think that's framed up kind of nicely. Next thing I'm going to do is prepare this for the materials that I want to add. And I'm going to change my renderer before I do that. So I can click this little here. This is going to give me my rendered preview. Right now I cannot see anything because I got rid of the light, and the background is the same color as this, though. So I can see it a little bit. It's getting some ambient light from that surrounding world. Then I'm going to click this little camera button here for the render engine, and I'm going to change it to cycles. Under device, I want to switch that from CPU to GPU compute if you have that option. Now it might take a moment for it to kind of figure things out, but that really doesn't matter because it is kind of set to what I want. Now again, there's not the materials that I want. And I'm going to hover over here, and I get that little crosshair like that, and I'm going to click and drag, and that is changing my window. So I have two different windows here. This is my rendered view. I'm going to hide this right here. I can close that. Rendered view, and then here, this is that, just that flat shading view from my viewport shading. But instead of doing that, I'm going to change this environment here, and I'm going to change it to the shader editor. So now I can adjust the shader. Now this is all blank because there's nothing in there right now. I'm going to select this, and still nothing. I'm going to be using some nodes to create a material. So in order to make that active, I'm going to come over here into my materials. Right now there is no material on that circle. So I'm going to hit new, and it creates a new material. Looks the same because that default material was already still baked into it. But then I'm going to be making some changes to this. Now these things represent the color of what is something that is going into it, and then it is going into here, the material surface. So we are going to be making some changes to this. So I might have to shuffle this around at times. Before we go any further, I'm going to make things a little bit easier, and I'm going to turn on an add-on node known as the Node Wrangler. So you might have to do this, edit, preferences. So just in that menu, not the Blender settings, but the edit preferences, and I'm going to get into these settings. The only thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for this thing that says add-ons, and I'm going to search for node and then where it says Node Wrangler. So an add-on is something that gives a little bit more functionality to the software. And this particular one is made by the Blender Corporation. So that is going to help us a little bit later. So I have it selected. This is the current material, and then I'm going to be adding some things to it. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to this add, and I'm going to choose, I'm going to start typing. I want to start typing gradient texture. And then here is a gradient texture, but it's not doing anything to this yet. Now I'm going to take this eventually, and I'm going to be punching it into some things here. So I want it to be glowing. So I'm going to expand emission, and the color of this, I want to go to this. And then I can't see any difference because right now I have no strength to it. Now if I increase the strength, then I can kind of see the effects of it. So that is a linear gradient, and it is going across, so it's darker to lighter. But I want to make some changes to that. So from here, I'm going to make it a radial gradient. And then I can adjust that. And it's working, but not exactly the way I want to, because where is it doing the radial center from? So that's why I needed that Node Wrangler, because I want to hold on my keyboard. I'm going to hit Control-T, and it does this mapping. Now it hasn't made the changes yet because it's going from texture coordinate generated to vector, and then vector to vector. But what I want is, I want to take this object to vector. Now we're on to something. You can see it is in the object center, and then I have some control over it. But right now, sure, I can do some rotation, but that's not that full radar look that I'm going for. So I undid that. And then I want to add some, control over this. So I'm going to be adding something called a ramp. So I'm going to look here, I'm going to go to add, I'm going to take, and I want to choose this converter. It's going to convert it in a color ramp. Now it makes this. If I just put that over here, it's going to go between the two of them. You don't notice any change because I haven't made any changes here. But if I start to slide this slider over, now you're getting to something. You can kind of see that I'm getting that sweeping look. And for right now, we're going to leave this here. So I have, this is the coordinates, this is this object going to vector, and then later I will be adjusting this rotation. I want radial and color to vector, and then I've just kind of crushed this a little bit like that. I can also click here, and then I'm going to hit this and make it some sort of green, kind of a bright green. Now it has that as an emitter, but the rest of this is not emitting it. So I'm going to make some further changes. First, I'm going to change the world. So I'm going to go to this world, and I'll get back to this. So I'm going to hit this world here. And where it says color for the world, I'm going to just make that all the way black. So now I have this, so I can kind of just see that. If I deselect it, I just see this right here where it is lit up. I'm going to reselect it. It's going to look a little complicated, but once you start to get the hang of it, nodes are a little bit easier, but still can seem complicated and like a bunch of things tied together. A little bit of a knot. Next thing I want to do is I want to add, and actually I'm going to go back to that view over here so I don't make that mistake and change it. So I'm going to turn off camera to view right now so that I'm not changing. So when I do any zooming, I'm just zooming in and out of this look, but I'm not zooming in and out with my camera. So that would be good for that. Now I could say I'm almost finished, and I could do some animating of that, but what I'm going to do is add some other looks to this. So I'm going to add some details. Also need something, some sort of blip that it is, that's going to be hitting it. So I'm going to add a bit more to all of this. All right, so the next thing I want to do is add that blip. So in order to do that, I'm going to be adding some other textures, and I'm going to need to mix them. So I'm going to look for the Voronoi texture. I'm going to click that. And I would like to see what it would look like if applied to this. So I have this Voronoi texture, and I want to see what it looks like with this. So if I click this, and then I'm going to hold Shift and Control on the keyboard and left click. And what it's going to do, it's going to plug it in over here and show me what it would look like. So maybe I'm going to take that scale and adjust this. You can kind of see what it looks like. And then roughness doesn't really matter, and then this doesn't really matter. And I'm going to leave that randomness, but if I brought it down, then it would give me that checkerboard look. But I want it random. But it's not contrasty enough, so I'm going to add another ramp. So I'm going to go over here, add, and I'm going to look up ramp, and I got this color ramp. And I'm going to drop it in between there, and then can't see anything yet, but then I can make it more contrasty. Problem is, it's inverted from what I want, because I want a light blip, not dark blips. So all I got to do is in this ramp, I just grab this slider and slide it over. Now I have the blips that I want, and I can adjust those just by sliding that, and that's also changing the amount of blips. And then maybe I can go larger, maybe something like this. I only have a couple in there, but that's going to work for this particular thing. But now this is plugged in here, and I want to go back to this. So I can replug that, but the problem is this is no longer in that. So what I need to do is I need to add this and this together. So I'm going to go to add, and I'm going to choose add. And then here it says add, I want a mix color, or I could have typed mix, but color, mix color. And then I'm going to drop this here, and I'm going to take this output, and I'm going to drop that into the A of this. And now it went away because it's no longer plugged up here, but that's okay. I can scooch these around a little bit. Put this here, and I'm going to take the color of this and drop it into B. Still nothing because I haven't plugged it in over here. Then I'm going to grab that result, and I'm going to plug that into the color of my emitter. Now we're on to something. Though they are mixing each other or with each other, but it is an additive mix. So instead of that add, I could choose mix, but it's still not doing what I wanted to do. So, and I want to leave it at color, but I'm going to choose linear light. Then those blips disappeared, but I'm going to just take and show you this. If I rotate this around where they cross over each other, then I'm going to see that happen. So that's kind of showing me this. So I can make some adjustments to this, lighter or darker. And if I want to, I could even adjust this and adjust this color, but keep in mind what it is doing when it's doing this. It is using this linear light. So using a different color, you might actually try a different type of way it is mixing. So you can kind of experiment with that a little bit, but what you don't want to happen is those dots or those blips showing up before it sweeps over them. So I'm going to do a couple of undos, and maybe this will work for me right here. So it's just kind of swinging around, and then it's got some blips there. Sometimes if these blips aren't disappearing the way you want, depending on what numbers you have in, you can click this, and instead of using white, you could just bring it gray. And then if you're having too many blips this way, it's making it a little bit more subtle. But for this particular instance, I want it cranked all the way up so I can see that. And then I can adjust this as necessary. So here, maybe I changed it a little bit larger in the scale. Now I don't mind the blips, but I can do this slider here, and now they come a little smaller. But the problem is because I use that white, so instead of that white, I'm gonna make that slider gray. And now it disappeared over here, but it's still over here. So when I do a rotation, they kind of fade out like that. And maybe that's going to work for me. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and change that Z to 0 for right now. And then I've got that, so that's kind of slowly fading. You can also make changes to this. And you can, again, make changes to that color. If you don't like that color, you can choose something a bit more saturated. It is kind of dependent on the look you are going for. So I have this here. What I could also do is change the coordinates of this over time, those blips. I could actually be moving them. So I'm going to click this Voronoi texture. I'm going to hold Control T, and then that brings up this texture coordinates. Now, what I want is not generated, but I want object. So I can click Object, Object to Vector. The reason I could do that is because if I wanted to, I could change the position of those blips. I could actually have them move. So that's why I'm using those coordinates. Now, if it's not in the right place, I can try to put it wherever I want. And your numbers and my numbers are going to be different, depends on your project. The main thing is that when I'm doing this rotation, I'm seeing some blips. And I'm just pointing out that we can move those. So those can be later keyframed, so I can move them over time. So I've got my blips, and then I have my sweep, and then if I wanted to, I could animate that, but I'm gonna do a couple more things. The next thing I wanna do is I wanna make it maybe like look a little computer-like or screen-like. So right now it's very smooth, and maybe I wanna give it a pixely look. So I'm gonna add another Voronoi texture. I'm gonna click Add, and I've got Voronoi texture. I'm gonna drop that in here. And then I'm gonna have to add another thing here, but I wanna see what that would look like. I might as well go ahead and hold Control T and then get some coordinates, texture coordinates. Might not be necessary for this one. That's okay, and I'm gonna take Object to Vector. And then I wanna see what that looks like. I go to Voronoi texture, and I'm going to click Shift, Command, left click, and now it's plugged in. Now I'm gonna take that randomness and make it like that. So that is not as random. And then the scale, I'm gonna change it. I'm gonna make that scale pretty big. So I can kind of zoom in and take a look at that. But again, it is not doing it the way I want it exactly. So roughness doesn't seem to make much of a difference. I'll take that roughness to 0, drop that. And next thing I want to do is I want to be inverting this as well and adding a ramp. So I'm going to click Add, and I'm going to type in ramp, and now I have this color ramp here. I'm going to drop that in there, and I'm going to invert it because right now it's got just these circles, and but I want it the other way, and then I can make it more square-like, and I can make changes to the scale as I see fit, but I've got those lines in between to this. To see if I can get it the way I want it. Now, right now it is using this F1. I can try F2, see if that works. That's not giving me what I want. And see, smooth F1. It seems to make it a bit softer. You could try clicking normalize, but again, I don't think that's going to work for us. So F1 might be the best one, but you can also see what these other things do. Now it's making a diamond pattern. It's probably not going to work. Or this one here, that actually seems kind of like almost a three-dimensional pixel. So I'm actually going to use that one. And then I think that will work. So I'm going to punch in so you can kind of see that, and then I'll go ahead and punch out. But then I'm going to need to add all of this stuff together, and I'm also going to adjust this color. So I'm going to go here, click this, and I'm going to go ahead and grab some sort of green. And I think that's going to work, but now I want to plug these things back in. I want to plug this back in here. Oh, not to volume. I want it to go to surface. Now I'm not seeing this effect because these things are not added together. So I'm going to go back up here, add. I want this color mix. So this one right here. And I can scooch this stuff over so we can see and start plugging things where we want. So I want this to be added to this, to be added to this. So now I'm going to take this result, I'm going to plug that into A, and I'm going to plug this color into B, and I'm going to plug this result into this color. And now I've got that. But you'll notice that it's mixing it, but that sweep is there, but it's over the whole thing. And that's not what I want. So I'm going to click this instead of mix. And maybe I would settle on color dodge. You can make adjustments to this as you see fit. More or less pixely. But what I think you're going to find is you're going to get some of the best results with something that's kind of high in this scale. And I think that's kind of the look that I'm going for. So if I punch in, you can kind of see that pixely look. So If you want to see those numbers that I'm currently using, again, you can adjust that strength of this. And I'm just plugging directly into this color dodge. I think color dodge works. You can try clamp result, not going to make a difference. I would leave clamp factor on. So let's go ahead and go over that. So up here, this is my sweep right here, this color ramp here with this gradient texture. That is radial, and it is going into this mix that is a linear light, and I'm clamping it and going into another mixer so I can add some other things. And then what's going in here, this is blip. So if I want to, those are the controls that I need for my blip. And this is for that kind of pixely look. But all of that stuff together creates this. And then if I take and adjust this Z rotation, those things kind of fade out, and I've got my blip. So I'll undo that. Now I'm pretty well set for doing some animation. So here is my timeline, and let's go ahead and try to animate this. So I'm only going to have to be doing animating of this. I'm going to show that. If you wanted to, you could also animate the blips. But I'm just going to do this one right here. So come in here, and I'm holding middle mouse so I can shuffle around. And then left mouse is how I can move things. Middle mouse is how I move around in here. And then I can zoom in and out with the middle mouse. So I'm going to be changing the rotation, but I want to keyframe it. So I'm going to turn on this, that's auto keyframing. Then I'm going to come over here, hover over this, the Z rotation, and I'm going to hit I on the keyboard, and then it adds this here, and then I got the keyframe here. I'm saying at this point in time, be at this rotation. Then I want to think, well, how long do I want it to take for this to rotate around? Maybe I want it to take a couple seconds. So if I'm at 24 frames per second, I can take that and I can go to 48. And then I can make a change. So at this point in time, at 48 frames, what do I want it to be at? Then I can take this rotation, and then I'm going to punch in negative 359 degrees, okay? Hit enter. Now you'll notice that it added that keyframe, and then it's yellow here, green for those other ones. And then if I sweep through this, it does one sweep of that. But I want this to loop. I want it to just keep happening. So I'm going to click this to go to the beginning of time. And I've got my one loop, and then I'm going to make some changes here. I'm done in here. I don't need to look at this. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to right click, and I'm going to say join right. And that's just going to squish that over. And then I can take a look at this. Next thing I want to do is change this view. Instead of the playback view, or instead of the timeline, I'm going to bring up what's called the graph editor. So I click graph editor. I'm going to bring this up. Looks real similar to the timeline view. I can scroll in and out, or zoom in and out of that. And this represents my keyframes. So that material, this shade, and you can see it is this Z rotation. And that's what's going on right here. It is over time sweeping, it is changing. So I want to make this and say, well, I want this to kind of loop, just keep looping. So I can select those things. So I can click drag select. Now it is selected. And I'm going to do a Shift E. And that is set the F curve. So I do Shift E, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, make this a cycle, make this cyclic. So F modifier, Shift E is the shortcut. And now it has made it as a cycle. So if I drag through this, it is cycling through. Now it's jumping all over the place because I was dragging really fast in all of that time. So now if I go back over to my timeline view, right above that, and I can move this down. Now you'll notice I still only have 2 keyframes, but if I hit play, it is cycling through. And that is how you can do that. Next thing you're going to want to do is export this. In order to export it, we're going to make sure that it is set at the right export settings. And we got to figure out how long of a video we want this. Now, what we could do is we could actually just export this however long we want it. But right now we have it at 48 frames. So at frame 1, it's going to be at 0. And then it's going to go 359. And then if I went forward 1, now it's jumped forward to 0. So I can kind of figure out how long of a video that I want, and I can export it, but you really don't need to export that much. What you could also do is you could just export one cycle and bring that into a video editor and put it in for however long you want. And I think that's what I'm going to do. So I'm only going to export 48 frames because that would give me everything that I need if I were to continue to loop that in. So I'm going to set this. It is set at GPU compute. When it comes to settings, we're going to, right now it is 1920 by 1080. For this project, that is fine. I don't need 250 frames. I'm just going to put 48. And then now my timeline is going to end at 48. If I wanted to see what that would look like looping, I can just hit play now, and then you're going to see that it's going to cycle through. It's doing a loop. So you can see here it's just cycling through, but it's continuing. So that is working for us. Because in Blender, when you hit play, it's just going to loop your animation while you're viewing it in here. So 1920 by 1080, that'll work for this. Percentage 100%. We're going to leave all of that stuff. Next thing we want to do is make sure that we are setting it to the right place. I'm going to hit this folder. And right now, I'm going to just go ahead and put it on the desktop, but I would not recommend you do that. Could create a big mess. And I'm going to, on the desktop of this one, and I'm going to choose new folder. But again, I would, if you are doing this for one of our film classes, you would make sure you're putting it in your designated space. But for this, I will put it on the desktop, and I'm going to call this renders. And then nothing in there right now because I haven't added anything. This is what it's going to do. It's going to do an RGB with alpha. Compression, we want no compression. PNG is fine. And then we're going to leave all of those other things. Then we're going to go back to these render settings. This samples, this max samples, 4096, is way higher than we're going to need. I think we could probably get away with maybe 40 samples. We might just be able to get away with as few as 12 samples, but we'll just do 40. And then we are almost set. But we're going to do one more thing for fun. I'm going to go ahead and instead of just exporting it like this, I'm going to add a little bit of a glow. So we're going to do a composite. I'm going to hit compositing. And then what I want is I want to create a composite of that so I can add something called a glow or a glare. So rendered layers, nothing is rendered right now. So if I want to, I can choose render image just so we can kind of see what that would look like. It's going to take a little bit of time because it's the first time it's using that GPU compute, but in a moment I should have a render. So it's kind of speeding up a little bit there. Again, this is going to be the first time, and then in a moment it's going to render it. Okay, there it is, rendered it. So I can zoom into that. Now I can kind of see that pixely look. All right, so if this is what I want, but what I want is I want to have this kind of glow. So it finish that. That's just a sample render image of that. So that's that right there, and then we have something here. But what I want is I click use nodes, and what I want is I'm in this compositing thing. I'm going to click add, and I'm going to type glare. But instead of glare, I'm going to choose this one called blooms. And then I drop it in between here. So then what it does is it takes that rendered thing, you can kind of see this here, it takes the rendered image and it adds a bloom effect, kind of a glare, so it's kind of glowing outside of itself. And then you can adjust that strength how you see fit, but maybe I'm going to do 0.5 for that. So I have a glow look, and then when you render it, it is going to apply this glare effect as part of the composite. So one thing I should have done a long time ago is I'm going to go File, and I'm going to choose Save As. I'm going to save this just to the desktop right now. And I'll call this Radar. And I'm going to click Save As. And again, you should be saving it in your folder. Now I am set to render. So I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to go to Render, Render Animation. And now this is going to take a while. It's going to start rendering it. And right now it's on frame 1. And it's going to render all of it. And it's doing 40 samples. And then it just finished that first one. And then after it has done one, it'll drop that composite glare on it. Blender has finished rendering that sequence. So I am done in Blender. I'm going to go ahead here and quit Blender. If it asks me to save it, I'll save it. And next thing I'm going to do is, so here are my renders. If I double click that, then I can see what I have. Here is the first one. And then I can take a look at the last one, 48. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop that into Adobe Premiere. So I'll open up Adobe Premiere. If it asks me about permissions, then I'll go ahead and grant those permissions. This should be a quick, easy project. So when this comes up, I'm going to go ahead and close this. That's not important for right now. And I'm going to click New Project. It is important where you save yours. I am going to be saving mine to the desktop for this particular tutorial. But for you, you want to make sure that you save it in your designated spot. And I'll call this Radar. And select. And desktop is fine. And then that's it I got to do here. And I'm going to click Create. And if it asks permissions, I'll allow, and then I'm going to skip all of this stuff here. And then this little window here, I can X that out. I'm going to go ahead and go to Window, Workspaces, Editing, because that is a better environment. Next thing I want to do is import. I'm going to double click here, and I want to choose Import. And I'm on the desktop already. I'm going to go to Renders. I'm going to select the first one. I'm not going to select them all. I'm just selecting the first one. I'm going to click Show Options, and I'm going to say Image Sequence, and then click Import. And now it has created this image sequence that is 1 second and 18 frames. However, that is because it is misinterpreted as footage. So I'm going to right click it, and I'm going to choose Modify Interpret Footage. And then what I want to do is say assume this frame rate, because it's thinking 29.97, but it's actually 24 frames per second. Then click OK, and now it says 123. I'm going to bring this over here, and now I have this sequence. Next thing I want to do is, because I want this looping, I can just copy it, and that way I don't have to render the whole thing. Clicking afterward, even with the gaps in there, it doesn't really matter, because I'm going to get rid of those gaps. I select the gap, delete, select the gap, delete, delete. So you can do this however you see fit. And if I hit play, then I have this sweeping video with the blips. Right now I've got it for 15 seconds. I'm going to just go to have it and drop it a few more times in here, and then just make sure that I dump those gaps. I'm selecting it, hitting delete on the keyboard. That will clean that up. So, and almost 30 seconds worth of it. Another way I can do that with that all selected, I can grab all of those. Command C, come over here, and if Windows would be Control C. And then now I've made it even longer. And maybe I'll do that a couple more times. Because if I were using this as part of a scene for a movie, and I wanted this on the screen, I would want to make sure that it is looping. Now I could use a video player to play it. The issue would be is sometimes a video player, if I'm using this on a screen in a movie, a video player, once it reaches the end of it, it brings up the menu. So I'm trying to avoid that by just dropping in there a bunch of times, and I've got maybe 3.5, 4 minutes worth. And I think that is good. So I've saved that, and now you can see the effect also of that bloom. Next thing I want to do is export this. So I'm going to choose File, and I'm going to choose Export Media. I'm going to be exporting this also just to the desktop for right now. When it says Match Source Adaptive High Bitrate, I'm going to choose High Quality 1080 because that is what I did it with. If I were going to insert this into something else, I wouldn't be using this H.264. I might use some other format, but I need H.264 for this because this is actually going to be playing on a computer as part of a movie, and it is going to be part of the character's environment. So, and instead of this, again, I'm going to go high quality 1080, H.264. I'm going to expand this and go to more. I'll say render at maximum depth, use maximum render quality. I'm going to scroll down a little bit, and where it says VBR1 pass, I'll make it VBR2 pass. And that is going to just give me a little bit more quality on that final export. I'm going to click export, and in a moment, it's going to go through the first pass, passes through it, and after it does the first pass, then it will do the second pass. So as it goes through one time, it kind of analyzes it, figures out what it needs to do, and the second time it's going to be writing it. If I did a one pass, it would analyze and write it one right after the other. So this gets me a little bit more quality by doing a two pass, and it is almost finished. All right, so it is finished rendering, so I am done in here. I'm going to go ahead and quit Premiere. And then here is my final. I can double click that. And here it is. I can go full screen. So hit play, and there it is. In a moment that will disappear, the player menu, and then I can use this as part of the set for a film or as part of a prop, etc. And that is how to create a procedural texture in Blender for a radar effect. I hope you can continue to tell and live good stories.